Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 159, Inspiring Play in Young Children, a conversation with Carla Gull. I am so excited today to have a very special guest. One of the authors of Loose Parts is here to talk about the maker world and inspiring play. And I'm so excited. I talked a little bit about this book on episode 151 in the beginning of the new year, in the beginning of January. It was called What Do Loose Parts and Makerspace Have to Do with the New Year? And so if you want to check that out, I'll link to it in the show notes. But I've gotten further in the book and I finally had the opportunity to have Carla on the show. And I just love to speak to like-minded people who feel so strongly about the power of play and how important it is for us to engage children and get them to fall in love with thinking and learning. And she talks about that by using simple materials that we can find in our everyday world. So it's super exciting. I hope that you will stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey! So, I'm excited. I'm super excited. I hope that you are too. This book, Loose Parts, which I will link to in the show notes, and you can find it on Amazon, it is definitely a must-read for all teachers and homeschool parents. It really brings the idea of maker and makerspace to life, really right outside our doors. It's definitely one of my favorites. I'm excited. I'm not going to spend any more time telling you about how excited I am. Let's just get on with the show. So I'm so thrilled to have Carla Gull here today to talk to us about Loose Parts, her book that she and several other people wrote, and I'll let her talk about that. But oh my goodness, people, this is a must read book, especially if you care about children thinking and discovering and imagining and kids loving to learn. And I know that you do. So this is definitely something you're going to want to put your hands on. I am meeting Carla for the first time and I showed her my sticky notes and my writing all over the book. This is one book that I wouldn't want in a digital form. Like I need a hard book in my hand so that I can tab things and, put my notes in there. And I love that. So welcome, Carla.
Thanks. I'm so glad to meet you too, Trina. I've been a big fan of your makerspace work that you're doing. And there are so many parallels between the Loose Parts concept and then also makerspaces as well. And talk about that in our book, but just they meld so well together.
I think so too. I feel like you're like my spirit animal. Whenever I see things that you post and things that you're doing, I'm like, oh, I love her. She's so great. Like this is like just another person that cares deeply about kids learning and loving it. And I want you to talk about, like, when we first even started, it's like we jumped in right away, couldn't even help ourselves. And you talked about like why this came about. Like tell that story.
Okay. Well, I've been doing stuff with Loose Parts for a while, and it's really an age-old principle. It did not start when this phrase came about, even when it was coined in like 1971 by Simon Nicholson. But the first time someone picked up a stick or a rock, really, and used it for some type of different purpose than being a stick or rock, we've got Loose Parts. So I've been doing professional development and incorporating into nature play times and going into preschools as I do that, and with after school clubs and things of that sort. And when my son was in kindergarten, I noticed that he was doing more like spelling tests and worksheets, and not developmentally appropriate.
No.
But one of his friends from preschool was in a program where they have Forest Friday every week as part of their classroom. So they go outside no matter the weather, and they're outside climbing trees, building forts, etc. And I looked at that and I was just like, ooh, we've got to change something about this.
We're going to change it. Yes.
And I knew, and I'm so glad that we were able to get it published while he was still in third grade. So I've been able to come back to, he's in the same school, but just to this week right now, I'm hosting some light exploration labs and simple machines learning lab within the context of loose parts. And so it's great to see kind of that change from and not, that doesn't mean that everything in the school has changed, but they're willing and open, and they're embracing, hey, we love that joy and excitement, enthusiasm that children have when they get more ownership of their learning. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you've been able to see it, because sometimes, you don't get to see what's happening. And I feel that way sometimes when I create things, and unless I hear back specifically from a teacher or somebody sends me a picture of what their kids are doing or something like that, then I don't get to see it sometimes. And when I first started creating my makerspace moments in literature, I went into my friend's classroom because I had left the classroom at that point. And I'm like, I've got to see what this looks like with kids. Like, I can imagine what it would look like, but I need to see it. And so she's like, all right. So I took over and I did a little lesson. I did whatever. And then I'm like, this feels like magic. It felt like magic to me because they were thinking in a way that we weren't used to seeing, unfortunately. And I just felt like this is so, so incredible. Now, all right, there was something that you said that I wanted to say. First of all, Forest Friday. I think that's so cool. Like,
Yes.
how that's really cool. Like, what a great idea. And then that was it. Noticing some of the things that we're doing that aren't developmentally appropriate, or even noticing what kids were doing when they were given the ability to play. And often in education, we, play is like a bad word. Well, they just look like they're playing. I remember when I first created my first makerspace, that's what they said to me. That's what the teacher said. And I'm like, oh, I would get so mad because I feel very passionately about children being able to play and how much they're learning about their world when we give them the opportunity to play. So I want to talk about that, but I want to also tell you this story where I realized, where it really hit me, that we weren't like taking advantage of those opportunities with kids to really allow them to think and to explore and to look at things differently. And it had to do with being outside. We had a recess zone at my school, and this was a while ago, so it's been a while. And like, you had like the playground was one, you got to go to the playground 1 or 2 days, and then you rotated to, I don't know, an area in the field where you could play foursquare and like chalk and stuff like that. And then there was the field, which was nothing. And at first they gave us materials and like, what is that, cornhole and hula hoops and jump ropes and stuff like that. But as time went on, with a large elementary school, this was 1,300 students, the materials broke and were lost and we didn't have them. And people would complain about being on the field. They're like, there's nothing to do for my kids out there on the field. And I was like, what are you talking about? My kids love the field because they would use their imagination. I mean, I didn't like, I didn't encourage them to be like, this is boring. Like, I was like, go figure it out. What can you do? And they'd play tag, or they would use a tree and pretend like it was their, someone's house, or they would get the rocks and they'd play tic-tac-toe or whatever. And I'm like, use the materials around you. It's so important for kids to be doing that. And also, I was like, they don't know what to do. Like, kids should know what to do. It should be part of what they do. And we're not giving them those opportunities when we don't allow them to kind of be bored sometimes and figure things out. So it was a really big wake up call for me to see. First of all, I feel like having recess duty, I would rather have that than like sit down to lunch with them any day of the week. Cause I feel like you learn so much about kids when you watch them play. Like, there's just a lot of information as a teacher that I would want to know. So, okay. So tell me, so that was kind of a long story. So tell me about the importance of play. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So what is play necessarily? For this book, we knew that we needed to tie it to standards to some degree. We called it loose parts learning in K through 3 classrooms. And so we don't necessarily focus on play per se in our book, but and I do have a Facebook group called Loose Parts Play, where we focus more on the play aspect of things. but uh, but what is play? And so, like, if you look at this original theory of loose parts, some of the other verbs that Nicholson uses in this theory: build, construct, play, experiment, invent, explore, discover, evaluate, modify, study, think, consider, measure, draw, model making, calculate, destruct, slide, fold, hide, bounce. Like, so play, children do all of those things in play if we let them. And so play may be the overall arching word, but there's really a whole lot of other stuff that's going on during that time where students have their own voice and choice with what they're doing. Yes. And it's tinkering about, messing about with the materials. And if we can just allow for some time and space and materials for children to kind of figure things out, they are going to take things in much deeper connections and different routes and different levels of understanding and learning than what we can imagine. And so, like with this light learning lab, well, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here with it? And we recognize that it's an emergent curriculum, and we do have some standards that we're working with, but beyond that, the children are going to kind of drive where that goes, because they are coming up with things. Look, I discovered that this can do this, and look how it shines up on the ceiling, and all of those things, because they are the ones being the investigators. I was like, you're the scientists. You're the ones that need to learn as much as you can about light with all of these different experiences that you have here. And with that, I typically say to have a yes mentality. If a student asks us if they can do something use different materials or resources and such, if it's not going to hurt someone or necessarily something that I don't want to be hurt in the classroom, like damage something, does it matter if they're doing that? And of course, sometimes we need to put parameters around that, or say this would be a great thing to do during a specific time or something like that. But what's the harm in saying if they want to use the yarn that we have oodles of or whatever as part of an extension of their learning, because something has sparked in their mind. We're like, oh, I want to try this out and see what happens with this. And so, try to have a yes mentality with it all. And play is like we can blend those lines between play and learning. And, children's work is play. Yes. And that's learning is really what's happening. Yeah. And especially when we're doing it in developmentally appropriate ways that encourage that interaction where they are the drivers of it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's where the magic happens, when kids are learning and they don't realize they're learning because they're having so much fun. And I just recently ran into a former principal that I worked for, and I was talking about leaving the school system again. And one of the things I started feeling myself like fighting for what I think is right. Like I felt like I said something about, when did we stop caring about how kids feel about learning and thinking? And they were like, well, the school system, and they were going on. And I was like, no, but that's not okay. Like it's not okay, because we see a lot of research, and this is what I said about the whole research thing. We see a lot of research behind how much more you learn, how deeper you go when you're happy. And so we have to take those things into consideration when you feel joyful, or you feel like you're playing, you're thinking in a different way. And so we can't just ignore that research, which we often do, because we're like, no, it's fine. They can just be miserable, and we're going to get this standard in them no matter what. But, and I think, well, what about that? Like that's important stuff that matters. And I think it's interesting because even you said it, and I noticed it in the book. Like you are excellent in the standards, like focusing on standards, covering standards. And that's exactly what I did when I started creating things too. I didn't even just jump into makerspace. I was like, oh, let me think about how I could justify this. Like we have to. And like, I'm going to get all these reading and literature standards. Like that's going to be the focus this is just going to be the extension part. And I'm like, I feel like we have to justify play, like, or any of that kind of thinking, rather than like, well, we have to make sure it's standard space, and we have to make sure it's, rigorous and academic, and rigor makes me want to roll my eyes. But I'm like, But it is rigorous because
Yeah.
the kind of thinking that they're doing is so much beyond what they would do if they were reading a worksheet and answering questions, which, I understand that there's a place and time for that. But I also think how much further they go when it's self-directed learning, and how much more they want it when they have had a choice in it.
Yeah, definitely. I consider, well, as you were talking, I thought, oh, maybe we need to rewrite the standards. But I have noticed that there are more standards, like with NGSS and some of the other ones. Some of them are very specific, but many of them are open and broad enough where there's a lot of room. And sometimes it's like almost too much room, like, oh, but you could do this, then this, so how do we create that experience, or how do we have an open experience to guide students to that kind of end goal? And so, as like I was working with this group today, I created kind of observation sheets so that instead of me saying you must learn this and then testing on it, I could go in and check off, oh, they understand what a pulley is. They understand what this is. They can apply this in different ways. And we will be using other sorts of assessment and such, but it's just a different mindset. And there are some standards that are written that are more open-ended. And I think that's a word that we hear often with this is just instead of being so didactic of do this, I say we loosen it up a little bit. Yes. So yes. I've been kind of working on this whole plan of kind of loosening up our lessons just to give that, it doesn't have to be the whole time even, but just to give that taste of experimentation with the materials before they get to that point where they are applying it, because they need to be able to make it their own. As
they do need to make it their own. And one thing that we discussed before we started taping was that how like what that does as far as equity for all students. When students have the ability to, get their hands dirty and figure things out, they are gaining that background knowledge that they may lack from their own personal experiences. It's kind of leveling the playing field a bit, which I think is so necessary in many, many schools and all of our schools.
Yeah. And so the teachers that I'm working with know my child, and my child, of course, has had a little different experience than other people. And like, the other kids just don't have experiences like Karsten kind of thing. And so with this, we wanted to give all of them a shared experience where they could all play around with and tinker with these concepts. So they had that base level of experience in a playful manner. Yes. So that was self-directed so that they could then come back like with the simple machines, like, oh, I was playing with Play-Doh, but really I was using this tool. I was using a lever and I was using wheel and axle and all the different machines, simple machines that they were using with that. Yes. So
that's so cool. Yeah. I think that, and also you made me think of that, like now that you've allowed for that time period in a classroom, at home, however you're doing it, you are now setting yourself up for more success later on in the day. Like now you're moving to writing workshop, or you're moving into writing time. Now you've had this shared experience that you can now write about, and you've given them content that they may not be able to pull out otherwise. So there's like a benefit in the rest of the day as well. And I used to notice this to be true for specifically recess. And I think it's true for things like loose parts and makerspace as well. When we take the time to do those kinds of activities and we think in that way, it's like, it's a benefit for the entire day, rather than I can remember times when we couldn't go outside, or we couldn't, and we were fighting for recess, where they were going to take recess away for years in our schools. And it was insane. And I'm like, but it matters. That's how they get through the rest of the day. That's how they give me more effort, because they had that mental break and they were able to, it wasn't so structured at that time. And I was able to, we were able to go longer in the day with 7-year-olds than I would have if I didn't have that time. So I think that that's one benefit as well. is just what it leaks out into in your other areas that you're studying. Although I think loose parts and makerspace can be used in any subject area for sure. And especially when you look at your book, like how you have given specific lessons and specific guidelines to doing that, which makes it so someone doesn't have to guess. Like they have what they need in the book, which is why I think you should get this book, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes. But anyway, I think that's possible. But even if you weren't using that approach in every single subject, it still builds and allows you more momentum as you go through the rest of your day.
And it really just permeates their thinking. They start
Mhm.
thinking of using things in different ways, and applying things throughout the day, as opposed to just compartmentalizing everything, because
Yes.
it is a bigger picture. You have mentioned recess several times. And so we do have a short section on just our school environment.
Mhm.
And so what some schools are doing are really embracing loose parts in their recess areas as well. And so they might have like a big box or a shed, and some of them just have junk, you can call it that,
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh.
loose parts. Sometimes it has purpose, like old computer keyboards or
Mhm.
something of the
Mhm.
sort, pieces of fabric, tubes, all those kinds of things. But they may just have it even in trash cans on wheels, clean ones, and they
Yes.
can just wheel it out, jump it back in when they're done. And the storytelling, the engineering, the problem solving that happens with
So
this
cool.
stuff,
Yes.
this usually cast offs, can be very powerful.
Yes.
It does take a little bit of thinking outside the recess box, with management and storage and procuring the items. We try to give some suggestion and ideas of how to get those kinds of things, but it's been very successful. And I know that I go in to schools and do what I call a pop-up play. So it doesn't even have to be every single day, but I just bring a van full of stuff and open it up to play during recess, or
So cool.
in programs at after school programs, summer programs, community park programs, and things like that. And it's just amazing to see. I may have some idea of where I think it may go, but they just blow me out of the water every single time when I watch what they think they can do with stuff.
Yes,
They're,
it
they're,
really is
yeah,
amazing. It
yeah.
is an incredible experience. I have felt that way watching kids like learn and think, but also even in like when they have to come up with a solution to the story, that's often
Mm.
where mine, like the prompting point, the I'm justifying, and then here you go. But the things they come up with, I'm like, I would never have even thought of that. And it really is truly remarkable what they are able to do when you have given them some options or choices, and they have different materials and they figure it out. And
They
I
do.
think it's funny because I spent a little bit of time I was a media specialist last year, and I spent a little bit of time, I had to substitute for the engineering class one day. So I'm like, I'm not
Had or got to.
had to. Yeah, I did get to. I should use it as that, but I didn't. You don't feel like it's a choice when someone says this is what you're going to do.
That's true.
Which is frustrating. And I don't do very well with that kind of stuff because I don't like to have my choices taken away. And it makes me feel like my current job was not important. Like, we don't need to worry about that. I'll just put that to the side. But that's a whole nother story. So I ended up having a great time, which, because I love the kids, that's why. But I had a group of third graders, and they were doing a response to a story that I read, and they were just creating, all they had were these straws and connectors, and that's it. And they had to create a solution to the problem, and they built all kinds of cool stuff, and they were able to talk about and explain, and they were excited. Well, then fourth grade comes in, and they literally couldn't do anything. They were like, I don't know, I can't do it, Miss Devery. And I am like, what is going on here? And it really hit me. I'm like, the structure, the difference that occurs between third grade and fourth grade, I'm like, they're so structured. Everything must be this exact way. We're practicing for the specific tests because they were tested in multiple subjects in my state in fourth grade. And I'm like, we're pushing it away from them. Like, we're taking it away from them. They're losing their ability to be creative because we have forced them in this box. And the older they get, the worse it seemed, which is unbelievable, because the older you would think you'd have more ideas and more things to, but they didn't. It was heartbreaking. It felt like an experiment. I felt heartbroken by it.
It's really sad. And I've done a podcast episode too, and I think we write about it in the book too, just about hesitant children. Sometimes we get to those situations like they've been told no so many times. Don't get dirty. Don't get your hands messy. Don't take that out of place. Don't make a mess. So it's almost like I feel when I'm working with elementary age students, when I'm coming in, oftentimes I feel like I have to set it up. It's okay to do all these things.
Yes.
This is your job right now.
Yes.
And we almost have to give them a little bit of leniency as they take off those blinders of this is the only way I can do it, to open up the possibilities of what it could be, because they've been kind of conditioned to look at it one way.
And we have to remember those things because we want them to be problem solvers. And it's more difficult to problem solve when you haven't had any practice, like solving problems. So,
and that's a key concept of the theory of loose parts is solving problems, real life problems that are around us, wherever we may be. And loose parts are they can be whatever we have around us. And of course we can bring in specific subject specific things and such. But it can be the wind, it can be words, ideas and concepts, all of those kinds of things, which is exciting.
No, it is exciting. You definitely knock down some of the barriers. What do you think are barriers for teachers? Like why would someone not embrace this type of thinking and learning?
They think that I've seen that sometimes they think there's not enough time with that. However, I've noticed that oftentimes when you're doing these experiential kinds of things like this, you're checking off more than one standard and subject. They're usually very integrated type experiences. And so there can be more time if we play around with things like that. And then also it can be a little bit messy. And so, but, we talk about some classroom management with that. And the children are very motivated to want to be able to do things like this again when they have that opportunity. And so they, with the right environments in coaching, and it may take a little bit of coaching. And I have a whole podcast episode about cleanup ideas, and we have a section in the book and stuff about it. But building in some cleanup time to clean up the messes that we have made as part of it. And sometimes it's, I think people see, well, I can't give them an 8 out of 10 to know exactly what they've learned on it. And so we need to look at alternative ways of assessment and how we can show that they are learning through documentation and recording what they are learning through video and voice recording, and having them write down what they're learning as well, to show that, yes, we are through this experimentation, exploration, and play, we are learning. So we kind of need to change things up. It's not, it takes a little bit more energy and effort, but I feel sometimes as educators, like we need it too.
We do. No, we do. We need that spark to come back. Like we need to feel alive as well. And I think when you see happy children, and also I think we have to take a look at how we're assessing anyway. That needs to be looked at all the way around. So why do we keep assessing in that one way? Like doesn't happen in real life.
Nope.
You don't know if I'm a good driver just by the fact that I answered a multiple choice test, so it's there's things that we have to look at in a different way. And I think just because it doesn't have a test with it doesn't mean that it's not something that's really important, and also that our children are learning.
Yes. And we can show evidence of that learning in different formats.
In so many ways. Yes. Yeah. And we've lost the ability to be creative and think about other ways that we can show that students have learned something or mastered something, because we have all had to do this and this. So maybe we can stop that too. So it's not just for kids. It's like we get to stop as educators having to do it exactly the same. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. In fact, I don't want it to be exactly the same. I want it to look different.
Yeah. And sometimes I call these like loose parts starts or loose parts sparks, because it really is a starting point, and we don't know exactly how it will end up because they will. And I have seen children discover things that I never knew in my 40s, I never knew because I hadn't played around with it. But they're with giving them that time and space and materials, and educators nearby that can help with some of these kinds of things. We're giving them that opportunity to learn and investigate on their own. And they teach me. I learn all the time. It's not, I'm not the one who has all the knowledge. I have some knowledge. I have a lot of knowledge, but they continually surprise me with their new discoveries that I never would have noticed if we hadn't taken time to explore.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Oh, it's so exciting. What is next? What's the next thing for Loose Parts?
Oh, just trying to continue what we're doing, momentum with the book, try to share it more with the intended audience, the K-3 educators, working on, I think you had mentioned on a recent podcast episode, STEMCon, so I'll be presenting a couple times with that. And then our state science educator, Hasty, I'm in Indiana, things, and we're doing kind of a scoping review as well. So I do academic research, like hardcore, serious academic research, like on tree climbing and outdoor classrooms and loose parts. But we are looking specifically at science and loose parts and going through articles in the last 10 years or so to see, what is happening in science according to the research journals, and then how can we use these, our loose parts being used, this concept of loose parts, that mindset, is that being used in what's happening right now? And if not, what can we do to implement loose parts more? So,
no, I think that's great. I think that's so great. And what do you say, that's the last thing. What do you say to an educator who wants to do this? They want to do this, but they're having some pushback from admin. What's your suggestion for them?
I think it's totally fine to start small. So in our book, we give like a plethora of ideas. We wanted to be able to give like the whole spectrum of, this is how you start. This is a mindset. This is, opportunities for your classroom celebrations and your school environment and all those kinds of things. And then use that stream approach. So we wanted to give that bigger overall picture, but we talk about it in the book. You don't have to do it all. Just start small, choose one thing, and tie it to a standard so you can check that off, and then celebrate and share how it's been a success and how the students were so engaged with it and what they learned as part of it. So I think by experimenting in small ways and then continually adding new ways of doing it is very important with that. And I'll just share one way. And this is my idea. It's from International Stonework Play, Diana Susskind, but it's in the book too, but just stonework play. And I've used this concept so many times. And there are rocks everywhere. Okay. And there are some schools that do not allow children to pick up rocks at their schools.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And or sticks or any of those kinds of things. But there are usually rocks everywhere. And I sometimes bring rocks in myself, but lots of times we can just go find rocks wherever we are. So they have a special day, November 3rd, but this can be done anytime. But they go through just a basic process of exploring and gathering some rocks, and then creating and building with those rocks, and then narrating that, and then rendering it, drawing it out, drawing and then narrating it, and then sharing it. So that just simple cycle process. So creating these rock stories or pictures is just an easy way to
because it's right there. The materials are right there. I actually did a makerspace moment off of Ricky, the rock that couldn't roll. Have you ever heard of that story?
Oh,
yeah. And it's so fun. And that's it. And because learning about rocks in second grade is a Florida second grade standard. And it's, you're looking at the characteristics of rocks. And I just think look at this. Like this makes it so much easier. And kids love rocks. I did a rock unit every year. I had a rock collection in my classroom. Then all of a sudden kids had a rock collection every, oh, look at my new rock. It was Drails at the time. And they were going on and it was so fun and they got so much out of it. So, and that's a simple material. That's a loose part in the world that you can find and you're not paying anything for.
No. And we love recyclables and things like that too. So, just use the junk that's around.
Yeah, use the junk. Yes. So great. Thank you so much, Carla, for coming on and sharing a little bit about this phenomenal book. And again, I'm going to link to it in the show notes. Where can people find you?
So I have a Facebook group called Loose Parts Play. And then we also started one in conjunction with a book called Loose Parts Learning that focuses more on the learning aspect as opposed to just the play, though both of them work together and both concepts are important. It just depends on our settings and what we're doing, with those. And then have a podcast called Loose Parts Nature Play. That's on Facebook as well. And then on Instagram, it's loose_parts_play. In the places.
Yeah, that's exciting. All right. That's so exciting. I'll link to all of those. And again, thank you.
Yes, it's been a delight. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you for sticking around. I know it's a little bit longer today, but it's so worth it. I just think she is amazing. And I love that book. And I'm going to link to it in the show notes. It's Loose Parts. And it is so, so good. It's Loose Parts Learning in K-3 Classrooms. I want to give you the whole entire title. I also will link to some makerspace moments in literature because I talked about them. And then STEMCon, which we didn't really talk a lot about, but Carla will be presenting at STEMCon and so will I. And I'm so excited. You know how much I love STEMCon. This is STEMCon 2022, and we hope that you will be there. If you are joining us and you join through the link that I share, you will also get a little freebie. It's a week of lesson plans using a makerspace moment, and it is integrating STEM and using reading, comprehension, literature standards, and so much fun. So you can grab that. You get that immediately if you join STEMCon through me. And that is you can find that at trinidadburyteachingandlearning.com/STEMCon 2022. Hope to see you there. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.